The fluorescent lights above the jewelry counter hummed too loud. Morel Okoye stood perfectly still, her hands lifted slightly away from her body, not in surrender, but in a gesture that said, "See, I'm not hiding anything." Around her, the boutique had gone silent except for the faint jingle of holiday music leaking from overhead speakers. "You switched it," the woman behind the counter said again. Her name tag read Silas Harrow, and her voice carried across the small crowd like a courtroom verdict. "I watched you." Morel's throat tightened. She didn't speak immediately, because she'd learned that when you're a 17-year-old black girl standing accused in a place like this, your first words matter more than they should. "I didn't touch anything," she said quietly. Firmly. Silas leaned forward, her manicured nails drumming once on the glass counter. "The ring you were looking at. It's not the same one that's sitting there now." A few customers shifted their weight. One woman pulled her purse closer. Another pretended to examine a bracelet display but kept glancing over. The store smelled like cedar and something floral, expensive, deliberate. Morel felt her pulse in her temples. She'd come here 3 times before. Each time, she'd stared at the same silver band with the wave etching. The one that looked exactly like her mother's. The one she'd been saving for since August. "I didn't switch anything," Morel repeated. Silas straightened, smoothing the front of her black blouse. "Then you won't mind if I call the manager?" It wasn't a question. The security chime echoed as the front door closed behind another customer stepping in, someone who immediately sensed the tension and froze near the entrance. Outside, November wind rattled the storefront windows of Hawthorne Ridge, scraping cold air against the glass. Silas reached for the phone beneath the counter. "Don't move," she said. "Before we continue, if you're already hooked by Morel's story, hit that subscribe button right now. We bring you gripping, real-life inspired dramas like this every week, stories that don't insult your intelligence. Don't miss the next one." Hawthorne Ridge wasn't a large city, but it knew how to dress itself up when Thanksgiving approached. The streets wore their holiday lights like old jewelry, tasteful, understated, glowing softly against the gray November skies. The Lakeshore Winter Market was only days away, and the entire downtown corridor buzzed with preparation. Morel had walked these streets for most of her life, but lately they felt different. Colder. Not just from the weather. Her mother, Adana Okoye, had died that spring. Stroke. Sudden. The kind of death that leaves no time for goodbyes, only medical bills and unanswered questions. Among the belongings returned from the hospital, one thing was missing, her mother's silver ring. The one with the wave pattern. The one Adana never took off. Morel had searched everywhere. Called the hospital 3 times. Filed a report. Nothing. Then, 2 months ago, she'd walked past Benton and Alder Jewelers and seen it, or something so close it hurt to look at. A silver band. Delicate wave etching. Sitting in the vintage case like it had been waiting for her. She'd started saving immediately. Her father, Derek Brooks, was on the road most months, working industrial sites across the Midwest. Money was tight, but Morel had found work with Mr. Callister, the retired postal worker 2 blocks over. Yard work. Snow prep. $15 an hour, cash. She'd saved $230. The ring was $275. She was so close. But every time she entered the store, she felt eyes on her. Silas Harrow's eyes. Sharp. Assessing. The kind of gaze that measured you before you opened your mouth. Now, standing in the middle of the store with customers staring and Silas holding the phone, Morel understood something she'd been trying to ignore for weeks. Silas had already decided who Morel was. And nothing Morel said was going to change that. The phone behind the counter buzzed twice before someone picked up. "Grayson," Silas said into the receiver, her voice low but clear enough for Morel to hear. "I need you at the front counter. Now." She hung up. The holiday music played on. Silver bells. Ironic. Morel's fingers trembled slightly, but she kept her hands where Silas could see them. She thought about her mother. About the way Adana used to twist that ring when she was thinking, the silver catching lamplight in their kitchen. Outside, a transit bus hissed to a stop. A man with a dog walked past the window. Life continued, oblivious. Inside, time had stopped. Silas folded her arms across her chest and waited, her eyes never leaving Morel's face. Somewhere in the back of the store, a door opened. Footsteps approached. Grayson Thorne moved through the store like a man used to containing problems before they spread. He was tall, early 50s, with silver threading through his dark hair and a face that gave nothing away. He wore a charcoal suit without a tie, sleeves rolled to his forearms, professional, but not rigid. When he reached the counter, he didn't look at Morel first. He looked at Silas. "What happened?" Silas gestured toward Morel with one hand, her posture stiff with certainty. She switched the ring. The wave pattern banned from the vintage case. "I showed it to her 10 minutes ago, and when I turned to help another customer, she swapped it for a cheaper duplicate." Grayson's eyes moved to Morel now. Steady. Evaluating. "Is that true?" he asked. Morel's jaw tightened. "No, sir. I didn't touch anything." "She's lying," Silas said, too quickly. "I've seen this before. They come in, ask to see expensive pieces, distract you, and—" "Silas." Grayson's voice was quiet but sharp enough to stop her mid-sentence. He turned back to Morel. "What's your name?" "Morel Okoye." "And you were looking at a ring?" "Yes. The silver one with the wave pattern. I've been saving for it." Grayson nodded slowly, as if filing that information somewhere he'd retrieve later. "Do you have a receipt? Proof of purchase?" "I haven't bought it yet. I was just looking at it again. I come here a lot." Silas made a small sound, something between a scoff and a sigh. "She comes in all the time. Just stares at things. Never buys. It's suspicious." A customer near the door shifted uncomfortably. Another whispered something to her companion. Morel felt the weight of their attention like hands pressing down on her shoulders. Grayson glanced around the store, noting the small crowd that had formed. He was good at reading rooms, too good. He could see how this looked. A young black girl. An accusation. Witnesses. "All right," he said, his tone measured. "Nobody leaves. I'm going to check the system logs and review what we have on camera." Morel's chest loosened slightly. Cameras. That would prove it. She hadn't touched anything. But Silas stepped closer to Grayson, lowering her voice just enough that Morel had to strain to hear. "There was an incident this morning. A girl matching her description. Hoodie, backpack. She grabbed a bracelet and ran." Morel's stomach dropped. "That wasn't me. I wasn't even here this morning." Grayson held up one hand, a silent request for calm. "I'll check the footage from this morning too." He looked at Silas. "You're sure about what you saw?" "Completely." He nodded once, then walked toward the back office, his footsteps measured and deliberate. The store settled into an uneasy silence. Customers pretended to browse but kept glancing over. One older man near the watch display frowned, then shook his head and muttered something under his breath. Morel stood frozen at the counter, her hands still visible, her breathing shallow. Silas stayed behind the counter, arms crossed, her expression a mixture of vindication and impatience. And somewhere in the back of the building, Grayson Thorne was pulling up security footage that would either clear Morel's name or bury it. The holiday music shifted. Silent night. Morel closed her eyes for just a moment and thought about her mother's hands. About the ring that was never found. And about how quickly the world could turn against you when you looked like someone people had already decided to fear. Minutes crawled by like wounded animals. Morel remained at the counter, her legs aching from standing so still. She wanted to sit, to move, to leave, but Silas watched her like a hawk tracking prey, and any sudden motion felt dangerous. A woman in a beige coat approached the counter with a bracelet in hand, ready to check out. Silas waved her off without looking. "We're temporarily closed." "I'm sorry." The woman blinked. "But temporarily closed." The woman's eyes drifted to Morel, then back to Silas. Understanding bloomed across her face, the worst kind of understanding. She nodded slowly, set the bracelet down, and moved toward the door. But she didn't leave. She joined the cluster of customers near the front window, watching. Morel's throat felt dry. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the folded bills, 200s, a 20, and a 10. She placed them carefully on the glass counter. "This is what I saved," she said quietly. "I was going to ask if I could put down a deposit today and pay the rest next week." Silas glanced at the money but didn't touch it. "That doesn't prove anything." "It proves I wasn't trying to steal." "Why would I bring cash if I plan to?" "People do all kinds of things," Silas interrupted. Her voice had an edge now, something brittle beneath the professionalism. "You think this is my first time dealing with theft? I've worked retail for 15 years. I know the patterns." Morel felt heat rising in her chest, but she forced it down. Getting angry would only make things worse. She knew that. Every black kid in America knew that. "I didn't steal anything," she said again, each word deliberate. An older man near the back of the store, tall, dark-skinned, wearing a wool coat and a pastor's collar, stepped forward slightly. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "Maybe we should all wait for the manager to return before making conclusions." Silas shot him a look. "I know what I saw, Reverend March." So they knew each other. Of course they did. Hawthorne Ridge wasn't that big. Reverend March didn't argue, but he also didn't move. He stood there, solid and still, like a wall Morel hadn't known she needed. Another customer, a younger woman with a toddler on her hip, whispered to her partner. "This happened here last winter, didn't it? That whole thing with the necklaces?" Her partner nodded. "Yeah." The owner almost shut down. Morel's stomach twisted. She was being folded into a history she'd had nothing to do with. She was becoming part of a narrative that had been written long before she walked through the door. Silas pulled a small notebook from beneath the counter and began writing something down, notes, maybe, or a timeline. Her pen moved quickly, decisively. Morel watched her and realized something cold and sharp. Silas wasn't uncertain. She wasn't conflicted. She had already made up her mind, and now she was building the case to support it. The front door opened, and a man stepped in, middle-aged, glasses, carrying a briefcase. He looked around at the frozen tableau, confusion spreading across his face. "Are you open?" he asked. "No," Silas said flatly. He hesitated, then backed out, the door chiming softly behind him. Morel's hands trembled. She curled them into fists, then forced them open again. Her mother's voice echoed in her head, "Don't let them see you break. Hold your head up." But her mother had never been accused of something like this. Or maybe she had. Maybe that's why she taught Morel how to stand still under pressure. Silas looked up from her notebook, her gaze landing on Morel with something close to satisfaction. "The manager will be back any minute," she said. "And then we'll see." The unspoken threat hung in the air. Morel didn't respond. She just stood there, hands at her sides, money still sitting on the counter between them. Outside, the sky was darkening. The holiday lights were starting to glow brighter. Inside, the tension coiled tighter. Reverend Lyle March had been a fixture in Hawthorne Ridge for over 30 years. He'd baptized half the families in this neighborhood, buried the other half's grandparents, and mediated more disputes than the city courthouse. He knew when to speak and when to simply be present. Right now, he chose presence. He moved closer to the counter, not aggressively, but enough to shift the room's energy. His eyes met Morel's briefly, a look that said, "I see you." Not an accusation, but an acknowledgement. Morel felt something in her chest unclench, just slightly. "Silas," Reverend March said, his tone conversational, "how long have you known this young lady?" Silas frowned. "I don't know her." "That's the point. So you've never seen her in church? At the market? Around town?" "I've seen her in here. Multiple times. Always looking, never buying." "And that's a crime?" Silas's jaw tightened. "It's suspicious." "Or," Reverend March said slowly, "it's a young woman saving up for something meaningful." Another customer, a woman in her 50s with silver hair pulled into a bun, spoke up from near the earring display. "I do that all the time. Come in, look at things I'm saving for. It's not weird." Silas turned toward her, irritation flashing across her face. "This is different." "How?" The question hung there, unanswered. Because the answer was obvious to everyone in the room, even if no one wanted to say it out loud. Morel felt a strange mixture of gratitude and exhaustion. She appreciated the support, but she also hated needing it. Hated that her mere presence required defense. "I just wanted the ring," Morel said quietly. "That's all. It looks like one my mother used to wear." The silver-haired woman's expression softened. "Oh, honey." Silas made a dismissive sound. "That's a nice story, but it doesn't change what I saw." Reverend March tilted his head slightly. "What exactly did you see, Silas? Walk us through it." Silas hesitated, just for a second, a flicker of uncertainty. But she recovered quickly. "I showed her the ring. She held it, examined it, asked about the price. I told her $275. She said she needed to think about it and handed it back. Then another customer called me over, Mrs. Pemberton, asking about a brooch. I turned away for maybe 2 minutes. When I came back and checked the case, the ring looked wrong. The etching wasn't as deep. The silver wasn't as bright." "You could tell that from behind the counter?" Reverend March asked. "I know my inventory." "But you didn't actually see her switch it." Silas's eyes narrowed. "I know what happened. A younger man near the door, early 20s, wearing a delivery uniform, cleared his throat. I was here earlier. Like, this morning. There was another girl. Teenager. She was looking at stuff near that same case." Morel's heart sank. Silas turned toward him immediately. "What did she look like?" The delivery man shrugged. "I don't know. Hoodie. Jeans. I wasn't really paying attention." Was she black? Silas pressed. The room went very still. The delivery man shifted uncomfortably. I think so. Maybe? Morel wanted to scream. Wanted to ask why that mattered. Wanted to demand why every black teenager in the city was suddenly interchangeable in these people's minds. But she didn't. She just stood there, hands at her sides, while her entire identity collapsed into a single, suffocating box. Reverend March's voice cut through the tension. That case you're talking about, Silas, didn't the owner have some issues with it last year? Something about the locking mechanism? Silas blinked. What? I remember Merelda mentioning it. Said rings kept sliding around because the velvet padding was loose. Silas opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time, she looked uncertain. Morel filed that detail away. Loose padding. Rings sliding. The door to the back office opened, and Grayson Thorne emerged, his expression unreadable. Everyone turned toward him. He walked slowly, deliberately, carrying a tablet in one hand. All right, he said. I've reviewed the footage. Morel's breath caught. Silas straightened, confident again. Grayson stopped at the counter and looked at both of them. We have a problem, he said. Grayson set the tablet down on the counter, screen facing up. The video feed showed a grainy overhead view of the jewelry case, time-stamped from earlier that afternoon. The system logged activity near the vintage case at 2:47 p.m., Grayson said. That matches the time Silas said she was helping Mrs. Pemberton. Silas's face brightened. See? I told you. But, Grayson continued, his tone measured, the angle doesn't show faces. Just movement. Someone was at the case, but I can't confirm who. Morel's stomach dropped. You can't see me? I can see someone. But the camera is positioned to capture theft in progress, not identification. It's pointed at hands, not faces. So it's useless, Silas said, frustration creeping into her voice. Not useless. Just incomplete. Grayson tapped the screen, rewinding the footage. The group around the counter leaned in slightly, watching the silent, jerky playback. A figure stood at the case. Hands moved. But the resolution was poor, and the overhead angle turned everyone into anonymous shapes. Morel felt helpless. The one thing that should have cleared her name couldn't. What about earlier? Reverend March asked. The delivery man mentioned seeing another girl this morning. Grayson nodded. I checked that too. There was an incident around 10:15 a.m. A teenager, hoodie, backpack, grabbed a bracelet and ran. We filed a report with the police. But... He hesitated. The description is vague. And it doesn't prove anything about this situation. It establishes a pattern, Silas said quickly. 2 teenagers. Same type. Same day. Same type? The silver-haired woman near the earrings spoke up again, her voice sharp. What type is that, exactly? Silas's face flushed. I didn't mean. Yes, you did. The room's temperature seemed to drop. Even Grayson looked uncomfortable now, caught between maintaining order and acknowledging the ugliness creeping into the open. Morel felt a strange calm settle over her. She'd been afraid before, afraid of being blamed, afraid of consequences, afraid of how this would follow her. But now, hearing Silas fumble through her own biases, she felt something else. Clarity. This wasn't about a ring. It was about something much older. Can you check the case? Morel asked, her voice steady. Right now. See if the ring is actually different. Grayson considered this. Silas, do you have the original documentation for that piece? Silas hesitated. It's in the back. In the vintage log. Get it? She didn't move immediately. Grayson's eyes stayed on her, patient but firm. Finally, Silas turned and walked toward the back office, her heels clicking against the tile floor. The moment she was gone, the delivery man spoke up again. For what it's worth, I don't think it was the same girl. The one this morning was shorter. And her hoodie was blue. This girl's coat is black. Morel looked at him, surprised. He shrugged. I drive all over the city. You start noticing details. Grayson made a note on his tablet. Thank you. Reverend March folded his hands in front of him, his gaze distant. Morel wondered what he was thinking. Whether he'd seen this play out before. Whether he was tired of watching it happen. Silas returned, carrying a leather-bound ledger. She flipped through pages quickly, then stopped. Her finger traced a line of text. Here. Wave-pattern silver band. Vintage estate piece. Purchased from the Callahan collection. Serial number etched inside, WP4721. Grayson held out his hand. Let me see the ring. Silas unlocked the case, her movements precise but slightly hurried. She lifted the glass and removed the ring in question, holding it up to the light. Grayson took it, turned it slowly, then squinted at the inside of the band. The room held its breath. WP4721, he read aloud. Silas blinked. What? The serial number matches. Silence. Morel felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them back. Not yet. Don't cry yet. Silas stared at the ring, her confidence fracturing. But, it looked different. I swear it looked different. Grayson handed the ring back to her. Maybe the lighting changed. Maybe you misremembered. But the ring is the one from the log. Silas didn't respond. She just stood there, holding the ring like it had betrayed her. Grayson turned to Morel. I'm sorry for the confusion. You're free to go. But Morel didn't move. Because something still didn't sit right. And she wanted to know why Silas had been so sure. Wait, Morel said, her voice cutting through the uncomfortable silence. If the ring matches, then why did you think it was different? Silas's jaw tightened. She set the ring back in the case with more force than necessary. I told you. It looked wrong. But it wasn't wrong. I made a mistake, all right? Silas's voice had an edge now, defensiveness masking something deeper. Embarrassment, maybe. Or fear of what admitting the mistake meant. Grayson closed the ledger. Mistakes happen. The important thing is. No. Morel stepped closer to the counter, her hands flat on the glass. The important thing is that you accused me of stealing in front of all these people. You made them think I was a thief. And now you're just going to say oops, my bad and move on. Silas's face reddened. I was doing my job. Your job is to accuse innocent people? I was protecting the store. From what? From me looking at jewelry? The silver-haired woman near the earrings spoke up again. She has a point, Silas. You didn't just make a mistake. You made an accusation. A public one. I know what I saw. Silas stopped herself, realizing how absurd that sounded now. Reverend March cleared his throat. Perhaps this is a good moment for everyone to take a breath. But Morel wasn't done. You said the ring looked different. How? What was different about it? Silas faltered. The etching. It seemed less defined. From across the counter? Through glass? I've worked here for years. I know. You thought you knew, Morel interrupted. But you were wrong. And instead of checking, instead of being sure, you just decided I was guilty. Grayson raised a hand. Miss Okoye, I understand you're upset. I'm not upset. I'm angry. There's a difference. The room went quiet. Morel could feel everyone's eyes on her, but she didn't care anymore. She was tired of being careful. Tired of measuring her words to make other people comfortable. The delivery man spoke up again, his voice hesitant. I don't want to make things worse, but I just remembered something. All heads turned toward him. He shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable. When I was here this morning, there was another customer. An older lady. She was looking at that same case, and I think she dropped something. A ring, maybe? It hit the floor, and the clerk, not you, Silas, someone else, helped her pick it up. Grayson frowned. What time was this? Maybe 10:30? Right after the girl in the hoodie ran out. Silas's eyes widened. That was Mrs. Dalton. She comes in every week. She's not. I'm not saying she did anything, the delivery man said quickly. I'm just saying, rings were being moved around. Things were happening near that case all day. Grayson pulled out his tablet again. I'll check the morning footage. Silas looked like she wanted to argue but couldn't find the words. Her certainty was crumbling, piece by piece, and everyone could see it. Morel watched her and felt a strange mixture of anger and pity. Silas wasn't a villain. She was just a woman who'd convinced herself of a story and then bent reality to fit it. But that didn't make what she'd done okay. There's something else, Reverend March said quietly. Silas, you mentioned the case had issues last year. The velvet padding? Silas nodded slowly, reluctantly. The owner had it repaired. It's fine now. When was it repaired? I don't know. Sometime in the spring? And you're sure it's been holding properly since then? Silas didn't answer. She looked down at the case, at the rows of rings sitting on slightly uneven velvet. Grayson crouched down, examining the display from below. Silas, when was the last time you rotated the inventory in this case? Last week. Did you notice anything off? She hesitated. One of the rings was sitting at an angle. I straightened it. Which ring? Silas pointed. The one next to the wave band. Grayson straightened, his expression thoughtful. So rings have been shifting. That doesn't mean. It means, Grayson said calmly, that your accusation was based on an assumption. Not evidence. Silas's hands curled into fists at her sides. She looked around the store, at the customers watching, at Reverend March's patient gaze, at Morel's unflinching stare. I'm sorry, she said finally, the words barely audible. I thought. You thought wrong, Morel said. And for the first time since the accusation began, Silas had no response. Grayson sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. All right. Everyone who doesn't work here, thank you for your patience, but you're free to go. We'll reopen in 15 minutes. The customers began to disperse slowly, murmuring to each other. The silver-haired woman paused near Morel, resting a hand briefly on her shoulder. You handled that well, she said softly. Better than I would have. Morel nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The store emptied. And Silas stood behind the counter, alone with her mistake. Grayson gestured toward the back office. Miss Okoye, would you mind stepping back here with me for a moment? I'd like to get your full account of what happened. Morel hesitated. She glanced at Reverend March, who gave her a small, reassuring nod. It's all right, he said. I'll wait right here. She followed Grayson through the narrow hallway lined with framed photos of the store's history, black and white images of Hawthorne Ridge from decades ago, when the streets were dirt and the buildings were new. The office was small, cluttered with paperwork and inventory logs. A single window overlooked the alley behind the building, where a maintenance worker was emptying a dumpster. Grayson motioned to a chair. Please. Sit. Morel sat, her hands folded in her lap. Grayson settled into the chair behind the desk, setting his tablet between them. First, he said, I want to apologize. What happened out there shouldn't have happened. Silas jumped to a conclusion, and I should have intervened sooner. You didn't know, Morel said quietly. No, but I should have asked more questions before letting it escalate. He leaned back, studying her. Tell me about the ring. Why that one? Morel took a breath. This was the part she hadn't wanted to share with a room full of strangers. But here, in the quiet of the office, it felt safer. My mom died in April, she said. Stroke. She was only 43. Grayson's expression softened. I'm sorry. She had this ring. Silver, with a wave pattern. She wore it every day. When she was alive, she used to twist it when she was thinking, or worried, or just there. It was part of her. And it's missing? Morel nodded. They gave us her things from the hospital. The ring wasn't there. I called, filed a report, searched everywhere. Nothing. And the ring in our case? It looks exactly like hers. I mean, maybe it's not the same one. But it's so close that when I saw it, I felt like I could breathe again. Like I could have a piece of her back. Grayson was quiet for a moment, letting her words settle. How long have you been saving? Since August. I work for a man in my neighborhood, yard work, mostly. $15 an hour. I've saved $230. And the ring is $275. I was going to ask if I could put down a deposit. Come back next week with the rest. She looked down at her hands. I know it sounds stupid. Spending that much on a ring. It doesn't sound stupid at all. Morel looked up, surprised. Grayson's eyes held something genuine, understanding, maybe, or recognition. My father died when I was 20. Left me his watch. Not expensive, not fancy. Just a Timex he wore every day. I still wear it. He tapped his wrist, where a faded leather strap held a simple silver watch. It's not about the object. It's about what it holds. Morel felt her throat tighten. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Walk me through today, Grayson said, his tone shifting back to professional. From the moment you walked in. Morel recounted it step by step. Entering the store. The holiday music. The customers browsing. Silas behind the counter, already watching her before she'd even approached. Did you ask to see the ring? Yes. I told her I'd been saving for it. She took it out, let me hold it. I asked about the price again, just to make sure. She said $275. I told her I needed a little more time. She put it back. And then? An older woman, Mrs. Pemberton, I think, called her over. Asked about a brooch. Silas walked to the other end of the counter. I stayed where I was. I didn't touch the case. I didn't even move. How long was Silas gone? Maybe 2 minutes. Maybe less. Grayson made notes on his tablet. And when she came back, she looked at the case. Then she looked at me. And I could see it in her face, she'd already decided something was wrong. Did she say anything immediately? No. She just stared at the ring. Then she called me over, louder than necessary, and said I'd switched it. Grayson nodded slowly. And you're certain you didn't touch the case while she was gone? I'm certain. He studied her for a long moment, then leaned forward. I believe you. The words hit Morel harder than she expected. Her eyes burned, and she blinked quickly, refusing to cry in front of this stranger. Thank you, she whispered. Grayson stood, walking to the window. Outside, the maintenance worker finished with the dumpster and drove off in a small truck. The alley was empty now, quiet. Silas is a good employee, Grayson said, his back still to Morel. She's been here 5 years. Never had a problem before. But? He turned. But she's also scared. Last year's thefts rattled her. Rattled all of us. The owner almost shut down. We beefed up security, installed new cameras, trained staff to be more vigilant. Maybe too vigilant. You mean suspicious? Yes. Morel stood. Being suspicious isn't the same as being fair. No, Grayson agreed. It's not. He walked back to the desk, picking up his tablet. I'm going to review all of today's footage. Morning to now. I want to see if there's anything that explains what Silas thought she saw. And if there isn't, then we have a different conversation. One about biases and assumptions and how we do better. Morel appreciated that he didn't dance around it. Didn't pretend the race element wasn't sitting in the room with them, heavy and undeniable. Can I stay? She asked. While you review the footage? Grayson considered this, then nodded. Yes. You have that right. He gestured for her to come around the desk. She did, standing beside him as he pulled up the security system. The screen split into 4 feeds: front counter, back room, side display, entrance. Grayson started at 9 a.m. and began scrolling forward. And Morel watched, her heart pounding, as the truth began to reveal itself frame by frame. The footage moved in fast forward, customers flickering through the store like ghosts. Grayson slowed it down at key moments. 9:47 a.m., a woman browsing near the vintage case. 10:15 a.m., the girl in the blue hoodie darting toward the door with something in her hand, a clerk shouting after her. Morel watched the theft unfold. The girl was younger than her, maybe 15. The hoodie obscured her face, but her panic was visible in every jerky movement. That's what set Silas off, Grayson said quietly. She was on shift when that happened. Had to file the report. But that girl doesn't look anything like me. To someone already on edge? Maybe she did. Fear has a way of blurring details. The footage continued. 10:30 a.m., the delivery man arriving with a package. Mrs. Dalton at the counter, examining rings. One slipped from her fingers, bounced once on the tile, rolled under the display. Grayson paused the video. There. They watched as a young clerk, not Silas, crouched down, retrieved the ring, and handed it back to Mrs. Dalton. But in the process, she bumped the display case slightly. The rings inside shifted, just barely. The padding, Morel said. The padding, Grayson confirmed. He forwarded through the late morning and early afternoon. The store filled and emptied. Customers came and went. Silas took over at the front counter at 1 p.m., her posture stiff, her movements precise. Then, At 2:43 p.m., Morel appeared on screen. She watched herself enter, watched herself pause at the window display before walking toward the vintage case. Watched Silas notice her immediately, that sharp, assessing gaze. "You see that?" Grayson said, pointing. "She's already watching you before you even approach." Morel's chest tightened. "Because I've been in here before. Or because of what happened this morning. Or both." On screen, Morel asked to see the ring. Silas removed it from the case, handed it over. Morel held it carefully, turning it in the light. Her face on camera held something Morel barely recognized, hope, fragile and aching. She'd looked at that ring like it could save her. Grayson let the video play at normal speed now. Morel watched herself hand the ring back, watched Silas return it to the case. Then Mrs. Pemberton appeared, calling Silas to the other end of the counter. Silas walked away. Morel remained exactly where she was, hands at her sides. She didn't move. Didn't reach for the case. Didn't do anything except stand there, waiting. "You didn't touch it," Grayson said, almost to himself. "I told you." He rewound the footage, played it again. Same result. Morel hadn't moved. Grayson exhaled slowly. "So what did Silas see?" "Nothing," Morel said. She saw what she expected to see. They watched as Silas returned, glanced at the case, then at Morel. Even on grainy security footage, the shift in Silas's expression was visible, suspicion hardening into certainty. Grayson stopped the video. He sat back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "I need to show Silas this," he said. "Will it change anything?" He looked at her. "What do you mean? Will it change what she thinks of me? Of people who look like me?" Grayson didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was careful. "I don't know. But it should." Morel turned away from the screen, walking back to the window. The alley was still empty, the dumpster lids closed. Above, the sky had deepened to a dusky gray, the kind of November evening that felt heavier than it should. "My mom used to tell me," Morel said, her voice distant, "that the world would try to make me small. That people would see me and decide who I was before I opened my mouth. She said the only way to fight it was to stand taller. Be louder. Refuse to shrink." She sounds like a wise woman. She was. Morel's breath fogged the glass slightly. "But she never told me how exhausting it would be. How every day you have to prove you're not what people assume. How you can do everything right and still be wrong in someone's eyes." Grayson was quiet. He didn't offer empty reassurances or try to fix what couldn't be fixed with words. He just listened. "I wanted that ring," Morel continued, "because I thought it would make me feel close to her again. But now, I don't know. It feels tainted. Like even if I buy it, I'll always remember this day. This moment. This assumption." "You don't have to buy it," Grayson said gently. "I know." She turned back to face him. "But I think I will anyway. Because she'd want me to. She'd want me to walk out of here with my head up, ring on my finger, and not let anyone take that from me." Grayson nodded. "Then that's what we'll do." He stood, picking up his tablet. "But first, I need to talk to Silas. And I'd like you there when I do." Morel's stomach twisted. "Why?" "Because she needs to see this. Needs to see you. Not as a threat, but as a person. And that only works if you're in the room." Morel wanted to say no. Wanted to leave, to go home, to be anywhere but here. But something in Grayson's eyes stopped her. He wasn't asking her to make this easy for Silas. He was asking her to be part of the solution. "Okay," she said finally. "I'll stay." They walked back to the front of the store together. Reverend March was still there, browsing near the watches, his presence steady and unobtrusive. He looked up when they emerged, his eyebrows raised in question. Grayson nodded once, a silent reassurance. Scylla stood behind the counter, restocking a display of necklaces. Her movements were mechanical, her face carefully blank. "Silas," Grayson said. "I need to show you something." She looked up, saw Morel, and her expression flickered, shame, defensiveness, something unreadable. "I already apologized," she said. "I know. But you need to see this anyway." Grayson set the tablet on the counter, angling it so both Silas and Morel could see. He queued up the footage from 2:43 p.m. and pressed play. And as the truth unfolded on screen, Silas's face began to crumble. Silas watched the footage in silence. Morel stood beside her, watching Silas more than the screen. Watching the way her shoulders tensed, the way her breathing changed, the way her fingers curled against the counter. On screen, Morel stood motionless while Silas helped Mrs. Pemberton. No reaching. No movement toward the case. Just a teenager waiting patiently. Grayson let it play twice. The second time, Silas's hands began to shake. "I was so sure," she whispered. "I know," Grayson said. "But I was wrong." "Yes." Silas looked at Morel, and for the first time, there was no defensiveness in her eyes. Just raw, unfiltered shame. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Morel didn't respond immediately. She let the apology hang there, let Silas feel the weight of it. "Why were you so sure?" Morel asked finally. Silas's mouth opened, closed. She looked away. "I don't know." "Yes, you do." Silas's eyes filled with tears. Because this morning scared me. That girl. The theft. And then you came in, and I thought I saw a pattern." "A pattern," Morel repeated. "You mean you saw a black girl and decided we all looked the same?" "No. Silas stopped, the denial dying in her throat. "Because that's exactly what she'd done, even if she hadn't meant to. Even if she hadn't wanted to believe it about herself." Reverend March stepped closer, his voice gentle but firm. "Silas, what Morel is asking you to do is hard. She's asking you to see your own blind spot. To admit that fear made you unjust. That's not easy." Silas wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I don't want to be that person." "Then don't be," Morel said. "But wanting it isn't enough. You have to do the work." Silas nodded, tears streaming now. "I will. I promise." Grayson gave them both a moment, then spoke. "Silas, I'm going to need you to take the rest of the day off. We'll talk tomorrow about what happens next." Silas looked stricken. "Am I fired?" "I don't know yet. That's not my decision. But what I do know is that you need time to think about what happened here. And Morel deserves space without you hovering." Silas nodded again, slower this time. She gathered her purse from beneath the counter, her movements shaky. Before she left, she stopped in front of Morel. "I know this doesn't fix anything," she said. "But I am sorry. Truly." Morel met her gaze. "I believe you." It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was acknowledgement. And sometimes that was all you could offer. Silas left through the back door, and the store felt lighter without her. Grayson turned to Morel. "What do you want to do?" Morel looked at the vintage case. At the ring sitting there, silver and delicate, the wave pattern catching the overhead lights. "I want to buy it," she said. "But I don't have enough." "How much are you short?" $45. Grayson considered this, then pulled out his wallet. He counted out $50 and held it toward her. Morel stared at it. "I can't take that. It's not charity. It's an apology. From the store. From me. For what you went through. I didn't go through it for money. I know. But take it anyway." Morel hesitated, then reached out and took the bills. "Thank you." Grayson unlocked the case and removed the ring. He handed it to Morel, no box, no ceremony. Just metal and memory. She slipped it onto her right hand. It fit perfectly. For a moment, she just stood there, staring at her own hand. At the ring her mother used to wear. At the piece of the past she'd fought so hard to reclaim. Reverend March smiled. "It suits you." Morel looked up at him, and for the first time all day, she smiled back. "It does, doesn't it?" Grayson processed the payment at the register, subtracting the $50 he'd given her. Morel paid the rest with her saved bills, the ones she'd folded so carefully. The register chimed. The transaction was complete. Morel Okoye walked toward the door, the ring warm against her skin. She paused at the threshold, looking back at Grayson. "Thank you," she said. "For believing me." "You made it easy," he replied. She pushed open the door, and the cold November air hit her face like a baptism. The holiday lights were fully lit now, strung across Main Street in loops and spirals. The Lakeshore Winter Market banners flapped gently in the wind. People walked past her, bundled in coats, carrying shopping bags, oblivious to the battle she'd just fought. She pulled out her phone and called her father. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, baby girl. You okay?" Morel's voice cracked. "I got it, Dad. I got Mom's ring." There was a long pause on the other end. Then, quietly, "She'd be so proud of you." Morel closed her eyes, letting the tears come finally. "I know." "You coming home?" "Yeah. I'm coming home." She hung up and started walking, her breath misting in the cold. Behind her, the jewelry store glowed softly, its windows full of promises and prices. But Morel didn't look back. She had what she came for. And more than that, she had her dignity. She had the truth. And she had the ring. 3 days passed before Morel heard from Grayson Thorne again. She'd spent the weekend at home, mostly in her room, turning the ring on her finger and thinking about everything that had happened. Her father had come home Saturday night, and they'd talked until 2 in the morning, about her mother, about the accusation, about how the world could be so beautiful and so cruel in the same breath. Monday morning, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. "Miss Okoye? This is Grayson Thorne." Morel sat up in bed. "Hi. I wanted to let you know that the store owner, Mrs. Vance, would like to speak with you. She's back from her trip and wants to apologize personally. Would you be willing to come by this afternoon?" Morel's first instinct was to say no. She'd gotten what she wanted. The ring was hers. The truth had come out. What more was there? But something in Grayson's tone suggested this mattered. Not just for the store, but for something bigger. "What time?" she asked. 3 o'clock? I'll be there." She arrived at 2:55 p.m., the same cold wind scraping down Main Street. The holiday decorations looked different now, less charming, more performative. Like the city was trying too hard to be festive. Inside the store, Grayson was waiting near the counter. He smiled when he saw her. "Thank you for coming. Where's Mrs. Vance?" "Back office. She wanted a private conversation." Morel followed him through the familiar hallway, past the black and white photos, to the small cluttered office. A woman sat behind the desk, mid-60s, silver hair pulled back in a bun, sharp eyes softened by age. Merelda Vance stood when Morel entered, extending her hand. "Miss Okoye. Thank you for coming." Morel shook her hand, wary. Mrs. Vance gestured to the chair. "Please. Sit." Morel sat. Grayson remained standing near the door, arms crossed. Mrs. Vance settled back into her chair, folding her hands on the desk. "I've reviewed the footage. All of it. And I've spoken with Silas extensively." Morel waited. "What happened to you was wrong," Mrs. Vance continued. "Deeply wrong. And I take full responsibility for creating an environment where my employee felt empowered to make that kind of accusation without evidence." "She was scared," Morel said quietly. "Fear is not an excuse." "No. But it's an explanation." Mrs. Vance studied her, something like respect crossing her face. "You're generous. More generous than I would be in your position." Morel shrugged. "My mom used to say that anger is easy. Grace takes work. Your mother sounds like she was an exceptional woman." "She was." Mrs. Vance opened a drawer and pulled out a small velvet box. She slid it across the desk toward Morel. "This is for you." Morel frowned. "I already bought the ring." "I know. This is something else." Morel opened the box. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet, matching the wave pattern of the ring. "It was part of the same estate collection," Mrs. Vance explained. "When I saw it, I thought, well, I thought you might like to have it. No charge." Morel stared at the bracelet, her throat tightening. "I don't need gifts." "It's not a gift. It's an acknowledgement. Of what you endured. Of the grace you showed. And of the fact that my store failed you." Morel looked up, meeting Mrs. Vance's gaze. "What happened to Silas?" "She's on leave for 2 weeks. Unpaid. When she returns, she'll undergo bias training. And she'll be moved to a different role, inventory management, not customer-facing." "You didn't fire her?" "No." "Why not?" Mrs. Vance leaned back in her chair. "Because I believe people can change. Not easily. Not quickly. But they can. And I think Silas wants to. Firing her would have been easier for me. But it wouldn't have taught her anything." Morel considered this. Part of her wanted Silas punished more severely. Wanted consequences that matched the humiliation. But another part, the part that sounded like her mother, understood that real change required proximity, not distance. "Okay," Morel said finally. Mrs. Vance nodded. "There's one more thing. I'd like to offer you a job." Morel blinked. "What?" "Part-time. Weekends. Helping customers, learning the business. You're articulate, composed, and you have an eye for detail. I could use someone like you." "You're offering me a job at the place where I was accused of stealing?" "Yes." "That's insane." Mrs. Vance smiled, a real smile, warm and slightly sad. "Maybe. But I think it would send a message. To Silas. To my other employees. To the community. That we don't just apologize with words. We follow through with action." Morel looked at Grayson, who raised his eyebrows. "It's your call." She thought about it. About walking back into this store every weekend. About facing customers who might remember her, who might whisper. About working alongside Silas, eventually. It sounded exhausting. It also sounded like exactly the kind of thing her mother would tell her to do. $15 an hour? Morel asked. 18, Mrs. Vance countered. Morel almost laughed. When do I start? Next Saturday. If you're willing. I'm willing. Mrs. Vance stood, extending her hand again. This time, when Morel shook it, it felt different. Less formal. More like a beginning. Morel left the office with the bracelet in her pocket and a job she never expected. Grayson walked her to the door. You handled that well, he said. I don't know what I'm doing. None of us do. We just try to do better than yesterday. Morel stepped out into the cold, pulling her coat tighter. The ring on her finger caught the light, the wave pattern glinting. She thought about her mother. About the way Adana used to say that strength wasn't about being unbreakable, it was about bending without breaking. Morel had bent. But she hadn't broken. And now, somehow, she was standing taller than before. Her first Saturday at Benton and Alder Jewelers arrived faster than Morel expected. She stood outside the store at 9:45 a.m., staring at the door like it might bite her. The same door she'd walked through weeks ago, when everything had gone wrong. But today she wasn't a customer. She was an employee. Grayson opened the door from inside, smiling. You're early. Didn't want to be late. Come on in. The store looked different in the morning, quieter, softer. The overhead lights hadn't warmed up yet, giving everything a bluish tint. The holiday decorations were still up, but they'd be coming down next week to make room for New Year displays. Mrs. Vance emerged from the back, carrying a name tag. Morel. Good morning. Morel took the name tag, staring at her own name printed in neat block letters. Morel Okoye, Sales Associate. Ready? Mrs. Vance asked. As I'll ever be. The first hour was training, learning the register system, memorizing inventory codes, understanding store policies. Grayson walked her through everything patiently, answering questions she hadn't even thought to ask. At 11 a.m., the first customers arrived. A couple looking for an anniversary gift. They were kind, distracted, easy. Morel helped them choose a necklace, processed the sale, and watched them leave hand in hand. It felt surreal. Normal. Almost boring. Then, at 11:47 a.m., Silas Harrow walked in. Morel saw her before Silas saw Morel. She was wearing jeans and a sweater, no name tag, no uniform. She looked smaller somehow. Tired. Silas spotted Morel behind the counter, and her face went pale. She turned to leave, but Mrs. Vance intercepted her. Silas. You're here for inventory review? Silas nodded, her eyes still on Morel. Yes, ma'am. Good. Morel, this is Silas. You two will be working together occasionally. The air between them was thick with unspoken words. Customers browsed nearby, oblivious. Morel spoke first. Hi. Hi, Silas echoed, her voice barely audible. Mrs. Vance excused herself, leaving them in the awkward silence. Morel straightened a display of rings, giving her hand something to do. I didn't know you were working here, Silas said finally. Mrs. Vance offered me a job. That's good. That's really good. Morel looked up. Is it? Silas flinched. I deserve that. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm just asking. Silas took a breath, steadying herself. I've been in therapy. Twice a week. Talking about what happened. About why I thought what I thought. And I'm learning that I carry a lot of assumptions I didn't even know I had. About people. About safety. About who gets the benefit of the doubt. She paused. I'm trying to do better. Morel studied her. Silas wasn't performing. There was no audience here. Just two women standing in a jewelry store, trying to figure out what came next. Okay, Morel said. Okay? Yeah. Okay. You're trying. That's more than most people do. Silas's eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry. For what I did to you. For what I said. I know, Morel interrupted gently. I know. They stood there for a moment, the weight of history pressing down. Then Silas nodded once and walked toward the back room, her shoulders hunched. Grayson appeared beside Morel. That couldn't have been easy. It wasn't. How do you feel? Morel thought about it. Honestly, I don't know. Part of me is still angry. Part of me wants to believe she's really trying. Part of me thinks I'm an idiot for working here at all. And the rest of you? Morel smiled slightly. The rest of me is just tired. Fair enough. The day continued. More customers. More transactions. More moments of normalcy punctuated by flashes of memory, standing at the counter, Silas's accusation, the crowd watching. But the memories didn't swallow her. They just existed. Part of the story, but not the whole story. At 5 p.m., Mrs. Vance called Morel into the office. How was your first day? Weird. But good weird. Mrs. Vance smiled. I heard you spoke with Silas. News travels fast. Small store. How did it go? Better than I expected. She's trying. I think. Do you think you two can work together? Morel considered the question seriously. I don't know. But I'm willing to try if she is. Mrs. Vance nodded, satisfied. That's all I can ask. Morel left the store as the sun was setting, the sky streaked with orange and purple. She walked down Main Street, past the market stalls being packed away for the night, past the restaurants filling with dinner crowds. Her phone buzzed. A text from her father, how was work? She replied, harder than I thought. Easier than I feared. He sent back a thumbs up and a heart. Morel stopped at the corner where the bus shelter stood, the one where she used to wait after school. She looked back at the jewelry store, its windows glowing warm in the twilight. She'd walked through those doors terrified and accused. Now she walked through them employed and empowered. The irony wasn't lost on her. But neither was the growth. She thought about her mother again. About the way Adana used to say that life would test you, but the test wasn't about winning or losing. It was about who you became in the process. Morel touched the ring on her finger, then the bracelet on her wrist. She'd become someone stronger. Someone braver. Someone her mother would recognize. The bus pulled up, its doors hissing open. Morel stepped aboard, paid her fare, and found a seat near the back. As the bus pulled away from the curb, she watched the jewelry store disappear behind her. But she'd be back next Saturday. And the Saturday after that. Because this was her story now. And she was writing it her way. 2 months into the job, Morel had settled into a rhythm she hadn't thought possible. The store had become familiar, not comfortable, exactly, but familiar. She knew which displays needed dusting, which customers wanted conversation and which wanted silence, which rings caught the afternoon light just right. Silas had returned from her leave in January, working inventory 3 days a week. She and Morel didn't talk much at first, just polite nods, brief exchanges about stock numbers and shipment dates. But slowly, something shifted. It happened in small moments. Silas bringing Morel coffee one Saturday morning, unprompted. Morel helping Silas reorganize the back storage room when it got overwhelming. Quiet gestures that said I see you without demanding forgiveness or resolution. But today was different. Today, a woman walked into the store, white, mid-40s, expensive coat, designer purse. She browsed the displays with the kind of confidence that came from never being questioned. Morel was at the counter when the woman approached. "I'd like to see that bracelet." "The gold one." "Of course." Morel unlocked the case and removed it. The woman examined it, turning it over in her hands. "How much?" $850. The woman frowned. "That seems high." "It's 18-karat gold. Estate piece." "Still high." Morel kept her expression neutral. "I can check if there's any flexibility on the price." The woman set the bracelet down. "Do you work here?" The question landed like a slap. Morel gestured to her name tag. "Yes, ma'am." "I meant, are you authorized to help me?" "Where's the manager?" Morel's jaw tightened. "I can help you. But if you'd prefer to speak with the manager, I can get him." "I would prefer that, yes." Morel walked to the back office, her hands shaking slightly. Grayson looked up from his paperwork when she entered. "What's wrong?" "Customer wants to speak with you. She doesn't think I'm qualified to help her." Grayson's expression darkened. "Did she say that?" "She didn't have to." He stood, buttoning his jacket. "Stay here. I'll handle this." But Morel followed him anyway, standing just behind the door where she could hear but not be seen. Grayson approached the woman with his professional smile. "Good afternoon. I'm Grayson Thorne, the store manager. How can I help you?" "Finally. I was asking about this bracelet, but your employee seemed unsure. Morel is one of our best associates. What questions did you have?" The woman hesitated, realizing her complaint had no substance. "I just wanted to speak with someone more senior." "She gave you the correct price. $850. It's firm." "That's quite expensive." "It's 18-karat gold from a reputable estate. If you're looking for something less expensive, we have other options." The woman's face flushed. "I'm not looking for cheap jewelry." "Then the price shouldn't be an issue." The woman stared at him, clearly unused to being challenged. "I'd like to speak with the owner. Mrs. Vance is away this week. But I'm authorized to make all decisions in her absence. So whatever you need to say to her, you can say to me." The tension in the room was electric. Other customers had stopped browsing, watching the exchange. The woman picked up her purse. "I'll take my business elsewhere." "That's your choice," Grayson said calmly. "Have a good day." She left, the door chiming sharply behind her. Grayson turned and saw Morel standing in the doorway. "You okay?" "I'm fine." "No, you're not." Morel exhaled slowly. "Why do people do that? Why do they assume I don't belong?" "Because they're scared of their own irrelevance. Because seeing you here, competent and confident, challenges something they've always believed about who gets to occupy certain spaces. I'm tired of being a challenge. I just want to sell jewelry." "I know." Silas appeared from the back room, her expression stricken. She'd heard the entire exchange. "Morel." "Don't," Morel said, her voice sharper than she intended. "Don't apologize for her. Don't make excuses. Just don't." Silas nodded, stepping back. Reverend March, who'd been browsing near the watches, approached slowly. "Miss Okoye, may I say something?" Morel looked at him, exhausted. "Sure. What just happened?" "That wasn't about you." That woman saw her own insecurities reflected back, and she lashed out. "It's cowardice dressed up as preference. I know that. But knowing it doesn't make it hurt less." "No," Reverend March agreed. "It doesn't. But it does remind you that their behavior is theirs to own. Not yours." Morel felt tears prick at her eyes, but she blinked them back. "Thank you, Reverend." He smiled gently. "Keep your head up, young lady. You're doing just fine." The rest of the day passed quietly. Morel helped customers, processed sales, restocked displays. Normal tasks. Normal rhythm. But something had shifted inside her. She realized she didn't need everyone's approval. Didn't need to convince every skeptical customer that she belonged. She just needed to know it herself. And she did. At closing time, Silas approached her near the register. "Can I say something now?" Morel looked up. "Go ahead." "I see it now. What you go through. What I put you through. I didn't understand it before, not really. But watching that woman today. I get it. Took you long enough." Silas flinched but didn't retreat. "I know. And I'm sorry it did. But I'm grateful you're still here. Still willing to teach me." "I'm not here to teach you," Morel said. "I'm here to work." "I know. But I'm learning anyway." Morel considered this, then nodded. "Okay." Silas smiled, small, tentative, but real. And for the first time since the accusation, Morel felt something close to peace. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But understanding. And maybe, eventually, that would be enough. Spring arrived in Hawthorne Ridge the way it always did, slowly, reluctantly, like the city itself needed convincing. The holiday lights came down in February. The winter market packed up its stalls. And by March, the first crocuses were pushing through the half-frozen ground along Main Street. Morel had been working at Benton and Alder for 5 months. 5 months of transactions and conversations. 5 months of learning the weight of gold versus silver, the difference between estate pieces and new designs, the quiet art of reading customers. 5 months of working alongside Silas, who was trying, really trying, to unlearn the assumptions she'd carried for decades. It wasn't always easy. Some days Silas said things that made Morel's jaw clench. Some days Morel's patience wore thin. But they kept showing up. Kept trying. And slowly, grudgingly, something like trust began to form. On a Saturday in mid-March, a familiar face walked into the store. Mrs. Pemberton. The woman who'd called Silas away that first day. The woman whose request had set everything in motion. Morel greeted her with a smile. "Mrs. Pemberton. Good to see you." The older woman's eyes lit up. "Morel. I heard you were working here now. Good for you, dear." "Thank you." Mrs. Pemberton leaned in conspiratorially. "I also heard what happened. With Silas and that awful misunderstanding." Morel kept her expression neutral. "It's in the past. Still. I'm glad you're here. Place needs more people like you." Morel wasn't sure how to respond to that, so she just nodded. What can I help you with today? That brooch I was looking at back in November. Is it still available? Morel checked the system. It is. Let me get it for you. As she unlocked the case, Silas emerged from the back room carrying a box of new inventory. She saw Mrs. Pemberton and froze for just a second. Mrs. Pemberton noticed. Hello, Silas. Mrs. Pemberton. Silas's voice was quiet, careful. The older woman's expression softened. How are you doing, dear? I'm working on it. Good. That's all any of us can do. Morel retrieved the brooch and handed it to Mrs. Pemberton, who examined it with the same careful attention she'd given it months ago. I'll take it, she said. Morel processed the sale, wrapped the brooch carefully, and handed over the bag. Mrs. Pemberton paid, thanked her, and turned to leave. But at the door, she paused and looked back. You know, she said, addressing both Morel and Silas, I've been coming to this store for 20 years. I've seen a lot of people walk through that door. But I've never seen anyone handle adversity with as much grace as you, Morel. And I've never seen anyone try to grow from their mistakes as hard as you, Silas. Neither of them spoke. Mrs. Pemberton smiled. Just thought you should both know that. And then she left, the door chiming softly behind her. Silas and Morel stood in the silence that followed. She's right, you know, Silas said finally. About the grace thing. Morel shrugged. I'm just doing what my mom taught me. Your mom must have been an incredible person. She was. Silas hesitated, then asked the question she'd been holding for months. Do you think we'll ever be okay? You and me? Morel looked at her, really looked at her. Saw the woman who'd accused her, yes. But also the woman who was trying to be better. I don't know, Morel said honestly. But I think we're getting there. Silas nodded, relief flooding her face. That's enough. That's more than enough. The rest of the day passed in its usual rhythm. Customers came and went. Jewelry was examined, purchased, wrapped. The register chimed its familiar song. At closing time, Morel locked the front door while Grayson counted the till in the back. Silas finished logging the day's inventory and gathered her things to leave. Morel? Silas called from the doorway. Yeah? Thank you. For giving me a second chance. Morel smiled slightly. We all need those sometimes. Silas left, and Morel stood alone in the store for a moment, the overhead lights dimming automatically on their timer. She looked at the vintage case, at the empty spot where her mother's ring had once sat. She touched the ring on her finger, the bracelet on her wrist. Pieces of the past, but also pieces of the future. She thought about everything that had happened here. The accusation. The humiliation. The slow, painful process of turning hurt into healing. It hadn't been easy. But it had been worth it. She grabbed her coat, turned off the lights, and stepped out into the cool March evening. The streets of Hawthorne Ridge were quiet now, most shops closed for the night. Above, the first stars were appearing in the darkening sky. Morel walked toward the bus stop, her breath misting in the air. Tomorrow she'd be back. And the day after that. Because this was her place now. Her story. And she'd earned every moment of it. The bus pulled up, doors opening with a familiar hiss. Morel climbed aboard, paid her fare, and took her usual seat near the back. As the bus pulled away from the curb, she looked out the window at the jewelry store growing smaller in the distance. The lights inside flickered once, then went dark. But Morel was still glowing. And she always would be. The end.